Okay, this video is going to go through the passing one argument paper, and so we're adding just one more level to what we've already learned. We've already learned how to use a method call to invoke a method to do its thing, to do its function, perform a series of tasks. But now what we're going to do is we're going to learn another element into this method call business. And so, but before we come to this, back to this paper, to this example, we want to demonstrate something which shows the need for what we're going to do. So here we have a program, and here's the main method, and the main method is of course the one that starts the program, and so it has cat stored in pet, in the variable called pet, and so here's pet, here's cat is the value of it, and so pet speak of course is going to start this method here. So pet speak is a method call, and so it's going to go down here and start this method. And so this method, it gets started and goes, okay, well, I'm just going to print I own a pet. And pet is a variable call, right? Because it's the name of a variable. It doesn't have quotation marks around it, so it's a variable call. And so it's calling. And so it seems like, okay, if I were to run this program, it should say I own a, in pet, the value of pet is cat, so you would think, okay, it's going to print I own a cat. And so let's see if that's in fact what it does. So we're going to go ahead and run it, and we're going to see something that's causing a problem here. It says that it can't find, on line 12, which is right up here, it cannot find this symbol. It can't find pet. And so this is a problem. Well, why can't it? And so this is going to be a thing that you'll want to make sure that you know. This is going to be a term that you'll want to know. You notice that we put a box. Let's put another box around this one. Oh, what happened? Okay, let's put another box here. And this is, of course, for the pet speak method. So what happens is, and maybe we could kind of carry, oops, I guess I should have done this. We want to go, okay, so there we are. So this, the red is the main method, and the pet speak is the the blue is the pet speak method. And so what happens is, the variables that are declared in the main method are considered to be in scope to the main method. So the term you want to know is in scope. The word scope, a good synonym for that is view. So the so in view. So this pet variable is in view to the main method, and therefore within the main method it can be called. The main method can do a variable call of the variable pet. Now what happens though is we should say pet is in scope, or it's in view to the main method. So in this line right here then, pet is out of scope or out of view to the PetSpeak method. And so that's the reason why this variable call, why the compiler cannot find this variable, because the variable is not in view. It's been declared in another method. So it's in scope to the main method, and we could say, and this would be actually be helpful to know, is that it's in scope because it was declared in the main method. Pet is out of scope to the PetSpeak method because it was declared in another method or block of code. Alright, that's how that works. And this shows the reason why we need method calls that can pass arguments, because we need a way to get the word cat over to this method so it can be used and printed here. So let us go, let's pause for a second. Okay, so back to our example here. I'm not going to be able to type some things, so you're going to have to in order to write notes, you're going to have to listen carefully, maybe pause the video at times. But as we go here, we've already established that pet is the name of the variable, and it's got the word cat in it. And so, but this time what happens is something that new here is that we have a variable inside the parentheses, and before there was nothing inside the parentheses of a method call. And so this, what's inside here, is called an argument. And so I'm not going to spell it out because it'll take too long, but this is an argument. And so that's important to use that because we're going to be using that term. Now this also is a variable call, because it's calling this variable and asking for it to return its value back to pet, to the variable call, and the value is cat. So this cat is really what's the idea here, and this cat is going to be passed to the method header. So cat is passed. So make sure you write that down because we're going to use this term a lot. It is passed to the method header. So arguments get passed. Okay, now in the method header we have a data type and a variable. Whenever you have a data type and a variable, what does the compiler do? Well, first of all, what is it called? This is called, of course, a declaration. So make sure that you indicate in here that this is a declaration. Just a reminder, we've used this term ever since chapter 2 when we first learned it. What does the compiler do with a declaration? Well, it reserves a memory location in the computer memory, gives it a name, and it determines what's the data type. The purpose of that memory location, of course, is to store data, which in this case is storing cat. Now this is a declaration. So when the computer, now this is going to be a question on the test. What does the compiler do when it reaches this method header that has a declaration in it? Well, it's going to do what it did here. It's the same exact thing. It's going to set up a memory location right here. It's going to give it a name, in this case P, and what it's going to do is it's going to store the value being passed. So this is called, and this is another word that you have to know. This is a test question. It's also going to be used in vocabulary and communication. This is a parameter variable. This P here is a parameter variable. Parameter variables are declared in the parentheses of a method header. Parameter variables are declared in the parentheses of a method header. And the purpose is to catch the value being passed, or to catch the argument being passed from the method call. That's all it is. So this is something you have to know, and you have to memorize it, and sometimes just thinking about it for a minute or two, it'll sink in. You go, okay, I got it. So this does not have to be complicated. So now the parameter, now the word cat, that data, is now in the confines of the PetSpeak method. So this is in scope to the PetSpeak method. The variable P is in scope to the PetSpeak method, so therefore it can be called. Alright, so now it'll say we should have a cat. Now, one other note of interest. Now, and also pay attention, this pet, variable pet, which we already talked about, is out of scope to this. So the last thing we need to mention here is that the parameter variables, we want to make them smaller. It's typical to make them smaller because they're only temporary. So a lot of times the first letter of maybe the variable that's in the argument, it works. Having a couple letters is fine. But you don't want to make it a regular variable typically. It's just simpler because they're temporary, just to make them 1, 2, 3 letter words or expressions. Alright, so that is passing one argument. And just one other note of interest, because sometimes students will think that every time that a parameter variable is established here, it's always going to be called in a print statement. Well, that's not true. So just to show you what can happen is in here, just notice that here's the parameter variable. Well, it wasn't called in the print statement like up there. It was actually called here for an assignment. So sometimes you might assign it to another variable that's declared within the PetSpeak or in this method. So it's now in a different memory location. Sometimes it could be used it could be called to be used in a calculation that's assigned, whose result is assigned to a variable. Okay, so it can be used in called in any fashion within the PetSpeak or within the method it was set up in. Alright, so that is passing an argument in Java.